Welcome to the Story Lab. I hope you enjoy this story. Let's begin. The buzz of conversation filled the air as I navigated through the crowded bar. My colleagues' laughter and the clink of glasses created a symphony of celebration. We just wrapped up a major project, and the entire office was riding high on our success. Tyrone, man of the hour, George called out, raising his beer in my direction. I grinned and made my way over to him. Hey, George. Quite the turnout, huh? Well, when you lead a project like that, people tend to show up for the party, he said, clapping me on the back. I shrugged, trying to downplay it. It was a team effort. Everyone pulled their weight. Always the modest one, George chuckled. But seriously, you knocked it out of the park. Christian's been singing your praises all night. At the mention of my boss, I glanced around the room, spotting Christian near the bar. He was swaying slightly, his tie loosened and a glass of whiskey in his hand. Speaking of Christian, I said, I should probably go say hello. Make sure he's not getting into too much trouble. George snorted. Good luck with that. He's been hitting the sauce pretty hard. I made my way across the room, stopping to chat with a few other coworkers along the way. By the time I reached Christian, he was slumped against the bar, his eyes glazed over. Hey, boss, I said, keeping my tone light. Having a good time? Christian's head snapped up, and a lopsided grin spread across his face. Tyrone, my man, the project wizard himself? I chuckled, deciding to humor him. I don't know about wizard, but I'm glad it all came together. No, Christian slurred, wagging a finger at me. You're a goddamn magician. The way you handled that client, pure gold. Thanks, Christian. I appreciate that. He leaned in close, his breath heavy with alcohol. You know what else I appreciate? I raised an eyebrow. What's that? Your wife, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. My body tensed, but I kept my face neutral. Excuse me? Christian's eyes took on a mischievous glint. Candace. I saw her at the gala last month. My God, Tyrone. She's stunning. Absolutely gorgeous. I forced a tight smile. Yeah, she is. I'm a lucky man. Lucky doesn't even begin to cover it, Christian said, his words slurring together. I felt something when I saw her, you know? Something primal. My jaw clenched, but I held my tongue. Maybe if I let him ramble, he'd realize how inappropriate he was being and shut up. No such luck. Christian leaned in even closer, his breath hot on my ear. I want to sleep with her, Tyrone. I really want to sleep with her. My fists clenched at my sides, knuckles turning white. Christian, I think you've had too much to drink. Let's get you a cab home. He waved me off, nearly losing his balance in the process. No, hear me out. I've got a proposition for you. I don't want to hear it, I said, my voice low and dangerous. But Christian, in his drunken state, was oblivious to the warning signs. He pressed on, his words cutting through me like a knife. Come on, Tyrone. I'll pay you. Good money, too. Just arrange it for me. Let me have a night with Candace. What do you say? The room seemed to tilt on its axis. Blood roared in my ears, drowning out the chatter and music around us. I stared at Christian, this man I'd respected, this man I'd worked my ass off for, and saw nothing but a lecherous, drunken fool. Without conscious thought, my fist connected with his jaw. The crack of bone against bone was oddly satisfying. Christian stumbled backward, crashing into a nearby table. Glasses shattered, and suddenly the bar fell silent. I stood there, breathing heavily, as Christian sprawled on the floor, holding his jaw and staring up at me with wide, shocked eyes. Tyrone, what the hell? George's voice cut through the silence. I turned to see my friend pushing through the crowd, concern etched on his face. But I couldn't deal with this right now. Couldn't face the questions, the stares, the whispers that were already starting to ripple through the room. Without a word, I turned on my heel and stormed out of the bar. Behind me, I could hear George calling my name, but I didn't stop. I needed air, needed space, needed to get as far away from Christian and his disgusting proposition as possible. The cool night air hit me as I burst out onto the street. I gulped it down, trying to clear my head, but Christian's words kept echoing in my mind. The sheer audacity of it, the disrespect. It made my blood boil all over again. Tyrone, wait up. I turned to see George jogging after me. He slowed as he approached, eyeing me warily. You okay, man? What happened in there? I shook my head, not ready to put it into words. I can't. I just need some time, George. I'll explain later. George hesitated, clearly torn between concern for me and curiosity about what had transpired. You sure? I can call you a cab or something? No, I said firmly. I need to walk. Clear my head. He said, all right, but call me if you need anything, okay? Day or night. I managed a tight smile. Thanks, George. I appreciate it. As I turned to leave, George called out one last time. Hey, Tyrone. I paused, looking back at him. Whatever Christian said or did, it must have been bad for you to react like that. Just know I've got your back, okay? For the first time since Christian's proposition, I felt a flicker of warmth in my chest. It was good to know I had at least one true friend in my corner. Thanks, man. That means a lot. With a final nod to George, I set off down the street. The city lights blurred around me as I walked, my mind racing. How was I going to explain this to Candace? To HR? Had I just torpedoed my entire career over one drunken comment? No, I decided. This wasn't just a comment. It was a proposition, a blatant disrespect of my marriage and my wife. Christian had crossed the line, and I'd be damned if I was going to let him get away with it. As I walked through the night, one thing became crystal clear. Things at the office were about to change dramatically, and I needed to be ready for whatever came next. The next morning, I sat at our kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee and trying to figure out how to broach the subject with Candace. She bustled around the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared her breakfast. The normalcy of it all felt surreal after the events of last night. Candace, I finally said, my voice sounding strained even to my own ears. We need to talk. She turned, a slight frown creasing her brow. Is everything okay, Tyrone? You came home pretty late last night. I took a deep breath. Something happened at the office party. Something bad. Candace set down the bowl she was holding and came to sit across from me. What is it? Did the project fall through? I shook my head. No, it's not about the project. It's about Christian. Her eyes widened slightly, and I could have sworn I saw a flicker of something pass across her face. But it was gone so quickly, I convinced myself I'd imagined it. What about Christian? She asked, her voice carefully neutral. I clenched my jaw, the anger from last night resurging. He propositioned me. About you. Candace's brow furrowed. What do you mean? He was drunk, I explained, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. He cornered me at the bar and told me he wanted to sleep with you. Offered to pay me to arrange it. I watched Candace's face carefully as I spoke, looking for any sign of the shock and disgust I was feeling. But her reaction seemed muted. She blinked rapidly, her lips parting slightly, but there was none of the outrage I'd expected. Oh my God, she said softly. Tyrone, that's awful. What did you do? I punched him, I said bluntly. Knocked him on his ass in front of the whole office. Candace's eyes widened. You what? Tyrone? Are you crazy? He's your boss. I stared at her, incredulous. Did you hear what I said? He offered to pay me to sleep with my wife. What was I supposed to do? Shake his hand. She stood up abruptly, pacing the kitchen. I understand you were upset, but violence isn't the answer. This could cost you your job. My job? I repeated, my voice rising. That's what you're worried about? Not the fact that my boss just propositioned me about my wife? Candace turned back to me, her expression unreadable. Of course I'm upset about that. It's completely inappropriate. But punching him isn't going to solve anything. It's just going to make things worse. I shook my head, a cold feeling settling in my gut. Something wasn't right here. This wasn't the reaction I'd expected from Candace at all. You seem awfully concerned about Christian's well-being, I said slowly. Candace's eyes flashed. Don't be ridiculous. I'm concerned about you, about our future. If you lose this job, I'll find another one, I cut her off. What I can't understand is why you're not more angry about this. Why you're not disgusted by what Christian said. She threw up her hands. Of course I'm disgusted, but getting angry isn't going to change anything. We need to think about this rationally. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. Rationally? There's nothing rational about this situation, Candace. My boss just treated you like a piece of meat, and you're acting like I'm the one who did something wrong. That's not what I'm saying, Candace protested, but her words rang hollow. I stared at her, really looking at her for what felt like the first time. The woman standing in front of me suddenly felt like a stranger. I need some air, I muttered, grabbing my keys from the counter. Tyrone, wait, Candace called after me, but I was already out the door. I drove aimlessly for a while, trying to make sense of Candace's reaction. It just didn't add up. Why wasn't she more upset? Why did she seem more concerned about Christian and my job than about the gross violation of our marriage? Almost without realizing it, I found myself pulling up outside Albert's house. If anyone could help me make sense of this mess, it was my best friend. Albert opened the door before I could even knock, concern etched on his face. Tyrone? What's going on, man? You look like hell. I managed a weak smile. Thanks. Mind if I come in? I could use a friendly ear. Of course, Albert said, stepping aside. Mi casa es su casa. You want a beer? I shook my head. It's a bit early for that. Coffee would be great, though. As Albert busied himself in the kitchen, I sank onto his couch, feeling the weight of the past 24 hours settle on my shoulders. All right, Albert said, returning with 2 steaming mugs. Spill. What's got you looking like someone ran over your dog? I took a deep breath and launched into the story. I told him about Christian's drunken proposition, my reaction, and Candace's unexpected response. Albert listened silently, his frown deepening with each word. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. Damn, Tyrone. That's a lot to process. Tell me about it, I muttered, taking a sip of coffee. Am I crazy for thinking Candace's reaction was off? Albert was quiet for a moment, clearly choosing his words carefully. No, you're not crazy. It does seem strange. I mean, if someone had said that about my wife, she'd be out for blood. I shook my head, feeling a small measure of relief that I wasn't completely off base. Exactly. But Candace seemed more worried about my job than anything else. It's like she didn't even care about what Christian said. Maybe she's in shock? Albert suggested, but he didn't sound convinced. Or maybe she's just trying to be practical? I shook my head. No, it's more than that. There was something off about her reaction, like she was hiding something. Albert leaned forward, his expression serious. Tyrone, I hate to even suggest this, but is there any chance Candace and Christian have had interactions before? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to dismiss it outright, to defend Candace's honor, but the seed of doubt had already been planted. I don't know, I admitted, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. I wouldn't have thought so, but after her reaction this morning, Albert nodded. Look, I'm not saying anything's going on, but given the circumstances, I think we need to keep a close eye on both of them. Something doesn't add up here. I ran a hand over my face, feeling suddenly exhausted. You're right. I hate it, but you're right. Hey, Albert said, clapping me on the shoulder. Whatever's going on, we'll figure it out. You're not alone in this, okay? I managed a weak smile. Thanks, man. I don't know what I'd do without you. As I left Albert's house, my mind was racing. The conversation had solidified the unease I'd been feeling since Candace's reaction this morning. Something was definitely off, and I was determined to get to the bottom of it. The week that followed was a blur of tension and unspoken accusations. I threw myself into job hunting, knowing that my position at the company was likely unsalvageable. Candace grew increasingly distant, spending more time at the office and offering vague explanations when I questioned her late nights. By Friday, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers, and I was done waiting for Candace to offer them up voluntarily. I was sitting in our living room when I heard her key in the lock. The clock on the wall read 9:30 p.m., another late night at the office. Candace walked in, her high heels clicking against the hardwood floor. She startled slightly when she saw me sitting there in the dim light. "Tyrone," she said, her voice unnaturally high. "I didn't expect you to still be up." I stood slowly, my eyes never leaving her face. "We need to talk, Candace." She set her purse down, a wary look crossing her features. "About what?" "About why you've been coming home late every night this week," I said, my voice low and controlled. "About why you barely look at me anymore. About why you seemed more concerned about Christian than about what he said to me." Candace's face hardened. "I told you, I've been busy at work, picking up the slack after your little incident." The casual way she referred to Christian's proposition and my reaction made my blood boil. "Cut the crap, Candace. I know something's going on. I want the truth, and I want it now." She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in her eyes. The mask of concerned wife fell away, replaced by a cold, calculating look I'd never seen before. "You want the truth?" she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Fine. I've been sleeping with Christian." The words hit me like a physical blow. Even though I'd suspected, hearing her say it out loud was like a knife to the heart. "How long?" I managed to choke out. Candace shrugged, as if we were discussing something as trivial as the weather. "Since the night of the gala. You remember? The one you couldn't attend because of your big project?" The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. "That's why you didn't care about what Christian said. You've been sleeping with him this whole time." "He's better than you in every way, Tyrone," Candace said, her eyes flashing with defiance. "You were holding me back. Christian sees my potential. He's already given me your old position." My fists clenched at my sides. "So that's what this was about? A promotion?" Candace laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. "It's about so much more than that. It's about ambition, about getting what I deserve. Something you could never understand." "You're right," I said, my voice dangerously low. "I don't understand betraying the person who's stood by you for years. I don't understand throwing away a marriage for a sleazy boss who'd proposition his employee's wife." "Oh, please," Candace scoffed. "Don't act so high and mighty. You're just jealous because Christian got what you couldn't keep." Something snapped inside me. In 3 quick strides, I was at the closet, yanking out her suitcase. "What are you doing?" Candace demanded. I didn't bother to answer. Instead, I moved to our bedroom, throwing open drawers and tossing her clothes haphazardly into the suitcase. "Tyrone, stop it," Candace yelled, trying to grab my arm. I shook her off, my voice eerily calm. "You want Christian so badly? Fine, go to him. But you're not staying here another minute." "You can't kick me out," Candace protested. "This is my house too." I zipped up the suitcase and dragged it to the front door. "Not anymore. Get out." Candace's face contorted with rage. "You'll regret this, Tyrone. I'll take you for everything you've got." I opened the front door and tossed her suitcase onto the porch. "Good luck with that. Now get out before I call the police and have you removed for trespassing." For a moment, Candace looked like she might argue further. Then, with a final venomous glare, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I stood there in the sudden silence, my heart pounding. The life I thought I knew had just crumbled around me, but amidst the pain and betrayal, I felt something else stirring, determination. Candace and Christian thought they'd won. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and a sense of resolve. As I stumbled to the kitchen for coffee, my phone buzzed with a text from Albert. "You okay, man? Want to grab breakfast?" I hesitated for a moment before replying. "Yeah, meet me at Joe's Diner in 30. At the diner, Albert was already waiting in a booth, 2 steaming mugs of coffee on the table. He took one look at my face and winced. "That bad, huh?" I slid into the booth across from him. "Worse." The waitress came over, notepad in hand. "What can I get you boys?" "Just the coffee for me," I said. Albert frowned. "Come on, Ty. You need to eat. We'll both have the breakfast special." Once the waitress left, Albert leaned forward. "All right, spill. What happened?" I took a deep breath and recounted last night's confrontation with Candace. Albert's expression darkened with each word. "That bitch," he muttered when I finished. "I'm sorry, man." I knew something was off, but I never thought. Yeah, well, neither did I said bitterly. 7 years of marriage, and it turns out I never really knew her at all. Albert shook his head. So what are you going to do now? I took a long sip of coffee, gathering my thoughts. First things first, I need evidence. If Candace thinks she's going to take me for everything in the divorce, she's got another thing coming. Evidence? Albert raised an eyebrow. Like what? A plan was already forming in my mind. Candace always backed up her phone to our shared cloud storage. If I can access that, Albert's eyes widened. You think she left evidence of the affair on there? Only one way to find out, I said, pulling out my phone. As I navigated to the cloud storage, Albert leaned forward, watching intently. You sure about this, Ty? Once you see what's on there? I paused, my finger hovering over the screen. I need to know the truth, Al. All of it. With a deep breath, I tapped the screen. Immediately, a flood of messages, photos, and videos filled the display. My stomach churned as I scrolled through explicit exchanges between Candace and Christian, dating back months. Jesus, Albert muttered, looking over my shoulder. They weren't even trying to hide it. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to keep scrolling. No, they weren't. They thought they were untouchable. As I delved deeper into the messages, a pattern emerged. It wasn't just about the affair. Candace and Christian had been plotting, using insider information to manipulate stocks and secure deals. This is bigger than just an affair, I said, showing Albert a particularly damning exchange. They've been up to some seriously shady business practices. Albert whistled low. That's corporate espionage, man. This could bring down the whole company. I nodded. Exactly. And it's exactly what I need. What are you thinking? Albert asked, a note of concern in his voice. I met his gaze. I'm thinking it's time to fight fire with fire. Candace and Christian want to play dirty? Fine. But they're about to learn they're not the only ones who can play that game. Albert studied me for a long moment. You sure about this, Ty? Once you go down this road? I'm sure. I cut him off. They destroyed my life, Al. My marriage, my career, everything. I'm not just going to roll over and take it. He nodded slowly. All right. I'm with you, man. Whatever you need. Just then, the waitress returned with our food. As she set the plates down, I caught sight of her name tag, Tracy. Tracy, I said, an idea forming. You wouldn't happen to know any good lawyers, would you? She looked surprised for a moment, then smiled. Actually, my sister's a lawyer. Tracy Fleming. She specializes in divorce and corporate law. Want her number? I grinned, feeling for the first time in days that things might just work out. Tracy, I'd love her number. In fact, I think I need to pay your sister a visit. As Tracy scribbled down the number, I turned back to Albert. Looks like we've got our first ally in this fight. Albert raised his coffee mug. To taking down the cheaters and making them pay. I clinked my mug against his, a fire burning in my chest. They won't know what hit them. 2 days later, I found myself standing outside the imposing office building of Whitmore Industries. My palms were sweaty, but my resolve was firm. Today was the day I'd set my plan in motion. As I rode the elevator to the top floor, I rehearsed my pitch in my head. Charles Whitmore, the owner of the company and Christian's father-in-law, was known for his no-nonsense approach to business. I had one shot at this, and I couldn't afford to blow it. The elevator doors opened, revealing a plush reception area. A stern-looking woman eyed me from behind a sleek desk. Can I help you? She asked, her tone making it clear that she doubted she could. I straightened my tie. Tyrone Ryder to see Mr. Whitmore. I have an appointment. She checked her computer, frowning slightly. Mr. Whitmore is very busy. What is this regarding? A business opportunity, I said smoothly. One that Mr. Whitmore will find very interesting. Before she could respond, a door opened and Charles Whitmore himself emerged. He was a tall, imposing man with steel gray hair and piercing blue eyes. Ryder, he said, his voice gruff. You've got 15 minutes. Make them count. I followed him into his office, a spacious room with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Denver. Whitmore sat behind an enormous mahogany desk, gesturing for me to take a seat. All right, Ryder, he said, leaning back in his chair. What's this opportunity you're so eager to discuss? I met his gaze steadily. It's not so much an opportunity, Mr. Whitmore, as it is a warning. Your company is in danger. Whitmore's eyes narrowed. Is that a threat? Not from me, I said quickly, but from people you trust. People who are betraying not just the company, but you personally. You've got 30 seconds to explain yourself before I have security throw you out, Whitmore growled. I pulled out my phone and pulled up the evidence I'd gathered. Your son-in-law, Christian Howell, has been engaging in corporate espionage and insider trading. And he's not alone. Whitmore's face remained impassive, but I saw a flicker of interest in his eyes. That's a serious accusation, Ryder. I assume you have proof? More than you can imagine, I said, handing him my phone. For the next 10 minutes, the only sound in the room was Whitmore's occasional grunt as he scrolled through the messages and files. When he finally looked up, his face was a mask of barely contained fury. How did you get this? He demanded. I took a deep breath. Christian propositioned my wife at a company event. When I confronted her about it, she admitted to having an affair with him. They've been using our shared cloud storage to communicate. I simply accessed what was already mine. Whitmore's jaw clenched. And what do you want in exchange for this information? Justice, I said simply. Christian and my soon-to-be ex-wife have destroyed my life. I want them exposed for what they are. Whitmore studied me for a long moment. You could have taken this to the SEC, made yourself a tidy sum as a whistleblower. Why come to me? I leaned forward. Because I don't just want them punished by the law, Mr. Whitmore. I want them humiliated. I want everyone to know exactly what kind of people they are. A slow, predatory smile spread across Whitmore's face. I think we understand each other, Ryder. What did you have in mind? The company gala next month, I said. I want to expose them there, in front of everyone. But I need your help to do it. Whitmore nodded slowly. Agreed. But on one condition. Name it, I said. You'll be the one to do it, he said. I want you to host the gala. You'll have full access to whatever resources you need. But when the moment comes, you'll be the one to bring them down. I felt a surge of anticipation. This was even better than I'd hoped. Mr. Whitmore, you've got yourself a deal. As I left Whitmore's office, my phone buzzed with a text from Albert. How'd it go? I grinned as I typed my response. Better than we could have imagined. Get ready, Al. The real work starts now. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into preparing for the gala. With Whitmore's resources at my disposal, I left no stone unturned. Every detail was meticulously planned, from the seating arrangements to the timing of the big reveal. But I knew that to truly make Christian and Candace pay, I needed to do more than just expose them. I needed to get inside their heads, to make them sweat. That's where the anonymous messages came in. You sure about this? Albert asked as we sat in his living room, finalizing our plan. Seems like a risky move. I nodded, my eyes fixed on the burner phone in my hand. They need to know that their time is running out. I want them paranoid, looking over their shoulders at every turn. Albert shrugged. All right, man. It's your show. What's the first message going to say? I thought for a moment, then typed out a simple message. I know what you did. Soon, everyone will. Short and not so sweet, Albert commented. I like it. Over the next few days, I sent more messages, each one hinting at the exposure to come. I watched from a distance as Christian and Candace grew increasingly agitated, their confident facades cracking under the strain. One evening, as I was leaving the office after another late night of planning, I ran into Nora Barker, one of the senior executives. Burning the midnight oil Tyrone? She asked, eyeing me curiously. I managed a tired smile. Just making sure everything's perfect for the gala. Nora nodded slowly. I have to say, I was surprised when Charles announced you'd be hosting. Especially after, well, you know. I saw an opportunity and decided to take it. Nora, can I talk to you for a minute? In private? She raised an eyebrow, but followed me to a nearby conference room. Once inside, I took a deep breath. What I'm about to tell you can't leave this room, I said. But I think you deserve to know the truth. Over the next half hour, I laid out everything Christian and Candace had done, showing Nora the evidence I'd gathered. By the end, her face was a mix of shock and anger. "Those bastards," she muttered. "I always knew Christian was ambitious, but this? How can I help?" I felt a surge of relief. Having Nora on my side would be a huge asset. For now, just act normal. But when the time comes at the gala, I may need your support. Nora nodded firmly. "You've got it, Tyrone. Whatever you need." As the days ticked down to the gala, I could feel the tension building. Christian and Candace were clearly on edge, snapping at colleagues and jumping at shadows. But they weren't the only ones feeling the pressure. The night before the gala, I found myself at Sandy's place, needing a break from the constant strategizing. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders," Sandy said, handing me a beer. I sighed, sinking into her couch. "Feels like it sometimes." Sandy sat next to me, her expression concerned. "Ty, are you sure about all this? I mean, I get wanting revenge, but what?" I asked, an edge creeping into my voice. She placed a hand on my arm. "I just worry about what this is doing to you. You're not sleeping, you're barely eating. Is it worth it?" I was quiet for a long moment, considering her words. Then I turned to her, meeting her gaze steadily. "Sandy, they didn't just betray me. They've been stealing from the company, manipulating stocks, ruining people's lives. This isn't just about revenge. It's about justice." Sandy studied my face, then nodded slowly. "Okay, I trust you, Ty. Just be careful, all right? Don't lose yourself in this." I managed a small smile. "I won't. Having friends like you and Albert, it keeps me grounded." As I left Sandy's place that night, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Tomorrow, everything would change. Christian and Candace thought they were untouchable, that they could play with people's lives without consequences. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I adjusted my tie in the mirror, taking a deep breath to steady my nerves. Tonight was the night everything would change. As I stepped out of the limo and into the grand ballroom, I felt the weight of expectations settle on my shoulders. The room was a sea of Denver's elite, all dressed in their finest. I spotted Christian's wife, Claire, chatting with a group near the bar. Charles Whitmore stood off to the side, his eyes scanning the crowd. And there, near the stage, were Candace and Christian, looking smug and self-assured. George materialized at my side, a glass of champagne in hand. "You ready for this, Ty?" My jaw set. "More than ready." "Are Albert and Sandy in position?" "Yep. Albert's by the AV booth, and Sandy's keeping an eye on our targets." "It's all set." I clapped him on the shoulder. "Thanks, George. I couldn't do this without you guys." As I made my way to the stage, I caught Candace's eye. She paled slightly, then leaned in to whisper something to Christian. "Good. Let them squirm." I tapped the microphone, and the room fell silent. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Whitmore Industries' annual gala. I'm Tyrone Ryder, and I'll be your host for tonight's festivities." As I delivered the opening speech, I could feel the tension building. Candace and Christian exchanged nervous glances, while Charles Whitmore watched them like a hawk. "Before we begin the evening's main events," I continued, "I'd like to recognize some of our key players. Christian Howell, would you and Candace please join me on stage?" Christian hesitated, then plastered on a fake smile and made his way up, Candace trailing behind him. "Christian has been instrumental in some of our recent ventures," I said, my voice dripping with hidden meaning. "Why don't you tell us about your latest project, Christian?" Christian cleared his throat nervously. "Well, we've been working on expanding our market share in." As he rambled on, I caught Albert's eye by the AV booth. He gave me a subtle thumbs up. Everything was ready. I turned back to Christian, cutting him off mid-sentence. "That's fascinating, Christian, but I think there's another project of yours that everyone would be much more interested in hearing about." Candace stepped forward, her voice tight. "Tyrone, what are you doing?" I smiled coldly. "I'm just making sure credit is given where it's due, Candace. After all, you've both worked so hard on this particular venture." With a nod to Albert, the screens around the room flickered to life. Gasps and murmurs filled the air as censored versions of Candace and Christian's explicit messages appeared. Christian's face drained of color. What is this? Turn it off. I'm afraid I can't do that, I said, my voice carrying across the now silent room. You see, ladies and gentlemen, what you're witnessing is just the tip of the iceberg. Christian Howell and Candace Ryder have been engaged in more than just an affair. They've been manipulating stocks, engaging in insider trading, and stealing from this company. From all of you. Candace lunged for the microphone, but I held it out of reach. Tyrone, stop this right now. You have no idea what you're doing. I met her gaze steadily. I know exactly what I'm doing, Candace. I'm exposing the truth, something you clearly know nothing about. As more evidence flashed across the screens, the crowd's reaction grew more intense. I spotted Claire pushing her way through the crowd, her face a mask of fury. Christian, she screamed, storming onto the stage. How could you? With her? Christian held up his hands, panic written across his face. Claire, baby, I can explain. Claire's hand connected with his cheek in a resounding slap. Save it. We're done. I want a divorce. As Claire stormed off the stage, I turned back to the stunned audience. I know this is a lot to take in, but there's one more person you need to hear from. Mr. Whitmore? Charles Whitmore made his way to the stage. He took the microphone from me, his voice filled with cold rage. Christian Howell, you're fired. Effective immediately. And Candace, you're no longer welcome in this company. I'll personally see to it that you both face the full legal consequences of your actions. The room erupted into chaos. Candace and Christian stood frozen on the stage, their world crumbling around them. I stepped back, watching as security moved in to escort them out. George appeared at my side, his eyes wide. Holy shit, Ty. You actually did it. A weight lifting from my shoulders. It's done. They can't hurt anyone else now. As the gala dissolved into a flurry of shocked conversations and hurried departures, I slipped out onto the balcony. The cool night air was a welcome relief after the tension of the ballroom. I heard footsteps behind me and turned to see Sandy approaching. You okay? She asked, concern evident in her voice. I took a deep breath, looking out over the city lights. Yeah, I think I am. For the first time in a long time, Sandy squeezed my arm gently. What you did in there, it was incredible and terrifying, but mostly incredible. I turned to face her, managing a small smile. I couldn't have done it without you guys. You, Albert, George, you kept me sane through all of this. She studied my face for a moment. So what now? Where does Tyrone Ryder go from here? I shrugged, feeling a sense of possibility I hadn't experienced in years. I'm not sure, but for the first time in a long time, I'm actually looking forward to finding out. The days following the gala were a whirlwind of activity. The media descended on Whitmore Industries like vultures, eager for any scrap of information about the scandal. I found myself at the center of it all, fielding questions and providing statements. One afternoon, as I sat in Charles Whitmore's office discussing the fallout, his secretary buzzed in. Mr. Whitmore, there's a Tracy Fleming here to see Mr. Ryder. Charles raised an eyebrow. Your lawyer? Standing up. If you'll excuse me, sir, this shouldn't take long. Tracy was waiting in the conference room, a stack of papers in front of her. She stood as I entered, a smile on her face. Tyrone, I've got news. I took a seat across from her. Good or bad? Both in a way, she said, sliding a document across the table. The good news is, given the evidence of Candace's infidelity and criminal activities, the divorce is going through without a hitch. She won't be getting a dime. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. And the bad news? Tracy's expression hardened. Christian and Candace are trying to spin this. They're claiming you set them up, that you fabricated the evidence. I snorted. Of course they are. Anything to save their own skins. It won't stick, Tracy assured me. The evidence is too solid. But I wanted you to be prepared. They're going to try to drag your name through the mud. I leaned back in my chair, considering this. Let them try. I've got nothing to hide. Tracy shook head approvingly. That's the attitude to have. Now, there's one more thing we need to discuss. The SEC wants to talk to you. My eyebrows shot up. The Securities and Exchange Commission? Why? They're investigating the insider trading allegations, Tracy explained. You're not a suspect, but as the whistleblower, they want your statement. I nodded slowly. All right. Set it up. I'll tell them everything I know. As Tracy gathered her papers, she paused, looking at me intently. Tyrone, I have to say, I've never seen a case quite like this. The way you handled it, it was impressive. I managed a small smile. I had a lot of help and a lot of motivation. After Tracy left, I made my way back to Whitmore's office. He looked up as I entered, his expression unreadable. Everything all right? He asked. I nodded, taking a seat. Just finalizing the divorce. And apparently, the SEC wants to talk to me. Whitmore's eyebrows rose. The SEC? Well, that was faster than I expected. You ready for that? As ready as I'll ever be, I said. Mr. Whitmore, I want to thank you again for your support in all this. I know it couldn't have been easy, given Christian's connection to your family. Whitmore waved his hand dismissively. Family or not, I don't tolerate thieves and liars in my company. You did us all a service, Ryder. Which brings me to my next point. He leaned forward, fixing me with an intense gaze. I want you to take over Christian's position. Permanently. I blinked in surprise. Sir, I'm honored. But are you sure? After everything that's happened, I'm sure, Whitmore said firmly. You've shown integrity, intelligence, and a backbone of steel. That's exactly what this company needs right now. I sat back, my mind reeling. This was more than I'd ever expected. Thank you, sir. I'd be honored to accept. Whitmore nodded, a rare smile crossing his face. Good. Now, let's talk about your first order of business. We've got a company to rebuild. As I left Whitmore's office, my phone buzzed with a text from Albert. News just broke about C&C's arrest. You free for a drink? I smiled, typing back a quick response. Absolutely. The usual place in 30? At the bar, I found Albert, George, and Sandy already waiting. They cheered as I approached, raising their glasses. To the man of the hour. George called out. I laughed, sliding into the booth. Come on, guys. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Sandy nudged me with her shoulder. True, but you were the mastermind. So spill. How does it feel to be the new big shot at Whitmore Industries? I shook my head, still amazed by the turn of events. Honestly, it hasn't sunk in yet. A month ago, I thought my life was over. And now, Albert raised his glass. And now, my friend, you're on top of the world. You took on the bad guys and won. That's something to celebrate. As we clinked glasses, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, doubters, and probably more than a few attempts at retaliation from Candace and Christian. But for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to the future. You know, I said, looking around at my friends, I think this calls for a toast of my own. They quieted, waiting expectantly. I raised my glass. To new beginnings, true friends, and justice served. May we never forget that the truth always comes out in the end. As our glasses clinked together, I knew that whatever came next, I was ready for it. Candace and Christian had tried to destroy me, but they'd only made me stronger. And now, with my real friends by my side and a bright future ahead, I was ready to take on the world. Weeks passed, and the dust began to settle. The media frenzy died down, replaced by occasional updates on Christian and Candace's legal troubles. I threw myself into my new role at Whitmore Industries, working tirelessly to rebuild the company's reputation and patch the holes left by Christian's corrupt practices. One crisp autumn morning, I found myself back in the courthouse, this time to finalize my divorce from Candace. As I walked down the marble hallway, I spotted a familiar figure waiting outside the courtroom. Candace, I said, my voice cold. She turned, her once confident demeanor now replaced by a haunted look. Tyrone, I didn't expect to see you here. I raised an eyebrow. It's our divorce hearing. Where else would I be? Candace fidgeted with her purse strap. I thought you might send your lawyer. After everything you did, you mean? I cut her off. No, Candace. I wanted to be here, to see this through to the end. She flinched at my words, then seemed to gather herself. Tyrone, please. Can we talk? Just for a minute? I checked my watch. We had a few minutes before the hearing. Make it quick. Candace led me to a quiet corner, her eyes darting nervously around the hallway. I know you probably won't believe me, but I'm sorry. For everything. I laughed, a short, humorless sound. You're right. I don't believe you. It's the truth, she insisted. I got caught up in the excitement, the ambition. Christian made me feel special, powerful. But it was all a lie. I studied her face, searching for any sign of genuine remorse. And now that you've lost everything, you're sorry? Convenient timing, Candace. She reached out as if to touch my arm, then thought better of it. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I regret what I did. To you, to the company, to everyone. I shook my head, unmoved by her plea. You're right. You don't deserve my forgiveness, and you're not going to get it. You made your choices, Candace. Now you get to live with the consequences. Tears welled up in her eyes. What am I supposed to do now? My career is ruined. I'm facing jail time. That's not my problem, I said firmly. You should have thought about that before you decided to betray everyone who ever cared about you. Just then, the bailiff called out that the courtroom was open. I turned to go, but Candace grabbed my sleeve. Tyrone, wait. Just tell me one thing. Did you ever really love me? I paused, considering her question. I did. Once. But that person I loved? She never really existed, did she? Without waiting for a response, I walked into the courtroom, leaving Candace and our failed marriage behind. The hearing itself was mercifully brief. With the evidence of Candace's infidelity and criminal activities, the judge had no qualms about granting the divorce on my terms. As the gavel fell, finalizing the end of our marriage, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Outside the courthouse, I found Sandy waiting for me, a supportive smile on her face. How'd it go? She asked as I approached. I took a deep breath, savoring the crisp autumn air. It's done. Finally. Sandy squeezed my arm gently. How do you feel? I considered the question for a moment. Relieved, angry, sad, but mostly free. She nodded understanding. That's a lot to process. Want to talk about it over coffee? I smiled, grateful for her presence. You know what? I'd like that. As we walked to a nearby cafe, Sandy filled me in on the latest news. Did you hear about Christian? Apparently, he's trying to cut a deal with the prosecutors, offering to testify against some bigger fish in exchange for a lighter sentence. I snorted. Typical. Throwing anyone and everyone under the bus to save his own skin. Sandy shook her head in disgust. Some people never change. But hey, at least justice is being served, right? We settled into a corner booth, steaming mugs of coffee in front of us. Sandy studied my face for a moment. You know, Ty, I have to say, you're handling all of this amazingly well. If it were me, I'd be a mess. I shrugged, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. Don't get me wrong, it hasn't been easy. But I refuse to let them win by falling apart. The best revenge is living well, right? Sandy grinned. Now that's the Tyrone I know and love. Speaking of living well, how's the new job going? I felt a smile spread across my face. It's challenging, but in all the right ways. Whitmore's given me free rein to clean house and implement new policies. It feels good to be making positive changes. I'm so happy for you, Ty, Sandy said warmly. You deserve this. All of it. As we continued to chat, I found myself reflecting on the journey of the past few months. The betrayal, the pain, the fight for justice. It had all led me here. To this moment of peace, surrounded by true friends, with a bright future ahead. Earth to Tyrone! Sandy waved her hand in front of my face, snapping me out of my thoughts. Where'd you go just now? I blinked, focusing back on her. Sorry, just thinking about everything that's happened. It's been one hell of a ride. Sandy leaned forward, her expression serious. You know, Ty, I've got to ask, do you ever regret how things went down? The public exposure, the scandal, it was pretty brutal. I met her gaze steadily. Not for a second. They made their choices, Sandy. They chose to betray me, to steal from the company, to hurt countless people with their schemes. What happened to them? That's on them. Not me. She nodded slowly. I get that. But still, it must be hard sometimes, knowing how it all ended. I shook my head firmly. The only hard part was discovering the depth of their betrayal. Everything after that? That was justice. And I sleep just fine at night knowing I did the right thing. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Albert. Turn on the news. Now. Frowning, I gestured to the TV in the corner of the cafe. Hey, can you turn that up? The bartender obliged, and suddenly the cafe was filled with the voice of a news anchor. Breaking news. Christian Howell, the former executive at the center of the Whitmore Industries scandal, has been found dead in his jail cell. Early reports suggest it may have been suicide, though an investigation is ongoing. The cafe erupted into murmurs. I sat back, stunned. Sandy reached across the table, gripping my hand. Ty, you okay? I took a deep breath, processing the news. Yeah, I'm okay. It's just, I never wanted this. I wanted justice, not? This isn't on you, Sandy said firmly. Christian made his choices, right up to the end. I nodded slowly, then straightened up. You're right. And as harsh as it sounds, his actions have hurt a lot of people. His death doesn't change that. Sandy squeezed my hand. That's right. You did what you had to do. You exposed the truth. What happened after that was out of your control. We sat in silence for a moment, the gravity of the situation settling over us. Then my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Charles Whitmore. Ryder, his gruff voice came through as soon as I answered. I assume you've heard the news? Yes, sir. I just saw it. Good. I need you in the office. We've got to get ahead of this, prepare a statement. The vultures will be circling again. I straightened up, my mind already shifting into work mode. I'm on my way, sir. As I hung up, Sandy was already standing, grabbing her coat. Duty calls. I nodded, throwing some cash on the table for our coffees. Yeah, gotta head to the office. Whitmore needs me to help manage this situation. Sandy smiled, a mix of pride and something else in her eyes. Look at you, all important now. Go on, go save the day. But Ty. I paused, looking back at her. Yeah. Remember, no matter what happens, you've got people in your corner. Me, Albert, George, we're here for you. Always. I felt a warmth spread through my chest. I know, and I couldn't be more grateful for that. As I stepped out into the crisp autumn air, I felt a sense of resolve wash over me. The road ahead would undoubtedly have its challenges. There would be more storms to weather, more battles to fight, but I was ready for them. Christian and Candace had tried to break me, to use me as a stepping stone in their twisted games. Instead, they'd only made me stronger. They'd shown me who my true friends were, what I was capable of when pushed to the limit. I hailed a cab, my mind already racing with ideas for how to handle this latest development. As the city rushed by outside the window, I allowed myself a small smile. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for certain. I was done being a victim. From now on, I was the master of my own fate. The cab pulled up in front of Whitmore Industries, and I stepped out, straightening my tie. It was time to face whatever came next. Head held high, I walked through the doors, ready to take on the world. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.